Welcome everyone. I asked on Instagram what you're struggling with most on your tailoring journey. And the biggest problem seems to be sourcing and selecting the right fabrics for your vintage or classic menswear project. So I made a list of suppliers where I get my fabrics, canvases, tools and other stuff. But before we have a look at this list, let's answer some other questions. I'll start with a round of questions that can be answered really quickly. How to tailor a three-piece suit for yourself? Well, I did make videos about making trousers, waistcoats, buttonholes, and I did a video on making a whole suit, as you can see here. However, making a step-by-step tutorial on how to make a three-piece suit is something I just can't do. I don't have the resources, the time to make something like that because it's a really complex process. So if you have a particular question, I'm happy to answer that or try to answer that. When did you start sewing? So I started sewing when I was 15 and now I'm old. Let's say I'm old, so I had a lot of time learning. Thing is, I think you don't need decades of experience, although they do help. I think the most important thing is to start small. Don't start making a three-piece suit. Start making a tote bag, an apron or a medieval tunic. Then work your way up to trousers, waistcoats, and in the end maybe you can do a suit jacket. And even when doing a suit jacket, beware that you should like divide and conquer the jacket. Learning how to set in sleeves, how to make welt pockets, how to make double welt pockets, how to make a lapel, how to make a collar on a jacket. Try to learn and make those things separately before taking on a whole suit jacket. Buttonholes. Well, luckily I already made a video about making proper buttonholes. Just have a look here. How do you rectify any mistakes you make? Well, first of all, I try to reduce the risk of making mistakes as far as possible by making a mock-up. Almost every time, at least every time I'm using a pattern that I haven't used before. Doing mock-ups, really important. And the second thing is seam allowance. I usually do like 1.5 centimeters of seam allowance at least, which is I think 5/8 of an inch. But if you haven't used the pattern before or never made, for example, trousers or at least this kind of trousers or whatever project you're doing, just add more seam allowance so you have a little wiggle room in case you make mistakes. Finishing pant leg seams. That's a really good question. So I'm using pinking shears on the long seams so they just don't fray, and on the insides, on the short seams that do get a lot more contact with your skin and a lot more friction, I usually use bias tape. And yeah, sometimes the insides of my garments look a bit messy, but that's historically very accurate. Find a girlfriend. Well, thank you for the question, but I'm probably one of the worst persons to ask this. I have no idea. I really don't have any idea. Maybe just leave a comment in the comment section and you will be found. At least in our community, if you know what I mean. Yeah, good luck. What's your favorite part of the process? Well, that's also a good question. I think I like drafting the pattern and then making the mock-up because I really enjoy, thinking about the shape, the 2D shape that turns into a three-dimensional, garment. So yeah, doing the drafting, the pattern drafting, and then making the mock-up, that I love that. I don't love working on all those details like, I don't know, buttonholes, buttons, all the stuff you need a lot of patience for. I'm not very patient. I mean, I had to learn patience when I started sewing. So tailoring or sewing is a good way, a good hobby to learn being patient. And I am a lot more patient than I was when I was 15, for example. But I wouldn't consider myself a very patient person at all, still. And then someone asked how to copy the patterns from our book, which is a very good book, by the way. These are the pattern sheets. What you also need is packing paper, a copying wheel, a pencil and scissors. Some weights are useful but not really necessary. First, you need to remove the cat from the table. You put down the packing paper, you put the pattern sheet with the pattern you want to copy on top of the packing paper, and then you follow the line of the pattern with the copying wheel, applying a bit of pressure. This results in very faint markings on the paper that you can trace with your pencil. This is something you can cut out, and then you will have the pattern piece for your project. And this works for all of those. Now let's talk about the main topic of the video, sourcing and selecting the right fabrics. So first of all, let's go through a short list of shops where I like to buy my fabrics, canvases, tools and other stuff. Beware that I live in Germany, so all my sources are European. I can't tell you anything about, I don't know, fabric shops in Australia or Japan or the USA, or I don't know. Don't ask someone else. The first shop I want to mention is Zator, which is a Czech shop, and they offer a lot of awesome historical fabrics. They have a great selection of linen. I, for example, got the fabric for these two waistcoats at Zator, as well as the linen on the trousers I'm wearing right now. Then we have Acorn Fabrics. I personally haven't bought at that shop because I never made a proper shirt for myself except the Regency shirt. But Sebastian buys at Acorn on a regular basis, and they have an awesome selection of fabrics you can use for shirting. Then we have a German shop called Orak Haus. And they basically have an awesome selection of lining fabrics, but also, and more importantly, a great selection of canvases. Linen canvas in different mixtures, horsehair canvas, buckram, also a lot of cool tools like the chalk sharpener I'm using. Then we have Nehelinia patterns. Apart from having a great selection of historical patterns, I bought my Regency patterns at Nehelinia, but they also have a great selection of materials for corsetry. And as you might remember, I also made a male corset, and I sourced my corset fabric as well as the synthetic whalebone at Nehelinia patterns. And then finally, I included a couple of eBay shops in my list. They're all located in the UK, I think near Huddersfield, which is a textile capital, as you might say. And they are basically providing very affordable leftovers of high quality batches of suiting fabrics. Tweeds, flannels, but also like thinner wools. So just have a look at those eBay shops. I sourced, for example, the fabrics we used for the garments in the book from those eBay shops. So just have a look, it's a big selection. I think you can find something there. Now you have the list. The next question is how to select the right fabric for your project. So of course, fabric weight is really important, and usually all those shops provide the information on how heavy the fabric is. And especially for linen, I really recommend heavy qualities, but also for wool because they last longer. Usually they're a lot better for the vintage or historical projects I'm doing and you might be doing, because those thicker fabrics, those heavier qualities do have a lot more twist in the yarn, which means they don't have a soft grip, but you really want that to make a basically crease-free garment. Some more thoughts on selecting the right fabric. Depending on the historical project you're doing, maybe check if a checked fabric would be more fashionable than a striped one or a solid color. So depending on the era, a certain pattern might be more appropriate than the other. Also, checks and stripes, but especially checks, are more difficult to process than solid colors because you have to align the fabric. If you don't do that, it might look very awkward. And in the end, of course, it's a personal choice. So I, for myself, have found basically my favorite colors, my color palette, and I don't have a capsule wardrobe, but I'm trying to keep in mind that, yeah, sticking to a certain color palette makes it a lot easier to combine your garments. For me, it's basically earthy tones, forest green and gold, and variations of that. But yeah, that's my color palette, and I try to stick to this when buying fabrics. Okay, since you ask a lot of questions, 86 if I counted correctly, there are quite a couple of questions left and I didn't forget them. I'll probably just make another video to answer all of those questions as well. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. It helps me a lot, really a lot, and it's free. So just subscribe. See you next time. Bye.